The man discovered a magical mushroom. Hawking eating it would enable him to stand. Jobs eating it would grant him another 50 years of life. It could perfectly cure any disease. However, this mushroom had multiple side effects. First, if it were widely popularized, medicine would cease to exist, and society would undergo drastic changes. The second side effect was more specific. Once eaten, it would cause permanent hallucinations. Soon, the first victim appeared.
You shouldn't have interfered. You ruined my life. I can't tell what's real. Is this real? Are you real?
Doesn't matter. I wish I had died.
A few days earlier, after escaping from prison, Marshall immediately began working with his mentor to cultivate blue mushrooms. Things progressed smoothly, and the first batch of mushrooms was successfully cultivated. At the same time, they spread the word and recruited a group of volunteers to test the mushrooms. It turned out the mushrooms were highly effective, and more volunteers came forward. Meanwhile, the owner of a large pharmaceutical company was diagnosed with cancer. At this point, only the blue mushrooms could save him. However, to prevent the mushrooms from reaching the market, he had already sent people to destroy their place of origin. All that could be found were some shriveled roots, and no one knew if they would still be effective. Just then, he received a phone call, informing him that Marshall was still alive, and had secretly cultivated many blue mushrooms. Seeing a glimmer of hope, the boss immediately boarded a plane. Back at the cultivation base, Marshall was unaware of the approaching danger. It wasn't until someone paid in cash that Marshall suddenly realized his mentor was profiting from the mushrooms. Angry, he went to confront his mentor, but the mentor asked him to take a walk outside. As the two were walking, a man suddenly rushed at Marshall with a gun, then frantically demanded to know why he had been saved. It turned out he was already suffering from severe hallucinations. Countless little white figures were watching his every move, like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Marshall began to regret using the mushrooms. Perhaps their side effects were more serious than he had imagined. But his mentor had just begun to reap the benefits. How could he agree to stop? In the end, the two reached a cliff, and the mentor, catching him off guard, kicked him off.